The darkness of the root cellar revealed a pair of terrified green eyes staring up at Quinn Xavier when he lifted the heavy wooden door. And in that moment, both their lives changed forever. Quinn had returned to his remote cabin in the foothills outside San Angelo, Texas, after 3 days of hunting elk in the mountains. The year was 1878, and the late autumn air carried the promise of an early winter. His powerful frame cast a long shadow across the opening as he stood there, muscles tense beneath his buckskin shirt, long dark hair falling past his shoulders. He had built this cabin with his own hands 5 years ago, seeking solitude after the war had taken too much from him. The root cellar was where he stored his provisions, and he certainly had not expected to find a woman hiding among the potatoes and preserved vegetables. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "please do not tell anyone you found me." Quinn's sharp blue eyes took in her appearance quickly. She was young, probably in her early 20s, with auburn hair that had come loose from its pins and dirt smudged across her pale face. Her dress was torn at the hem, and even in the dim light, he could see bruises forming on her exposed arms. She was trembling, whether from cold or fear he could not tell, probably both. "Who are you running from?" His voice was deep and measured. He did not move to grab her, sensing that would send her into a panic. Instead, he remained still, letting her see that he meant no immediate harm. "My husband," she said, and the way her voice broke on that word told Quinn volumes. "Please, I cannot go back to him. He will kill me this time." Quinn had seen enough cruelty in his 30 years to recognize the truth when he heard it. He stepped back from the cellar opening and gestured upward. "Come on up, you are safe here." She hesitated, those green eyes searching his face for deception. Finally, she reached up, and Quinn extended his large, calloused hand. When she took it, he felt how cold her fingers were, how delicate her hand seemed in his. He pulled her up with ease, his muscular arms making the task effortless despite her exhaustion. In the daylight, he could see her condition was worse than he had thought. Her dress was not just torn but stained with what looked like blood. A cut above her left eyebrow had dried, leaving a dark trail down her temple. She swayed on her feet, and Quinn instinctively reached out to steady her. "When did you last eat?" he asked. "2 days ago, maybe 3, I lost track." Her eyes darted around nervously, scanning the tree line as if expecting riders to emerge at any moment. "Come inside," Quinn said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He was not going to let her collapse in his yard. He guided her toward the cabin, noting how she flinched at every sound, every bird call, every rustle of wind through the pines. The interior of his cabin was simple but well maintained. A large stone fireplace dominated one wall, and Quinn had built sturdy furniture from local timber. Everything was neat, organized in the way of a man who lived alone and liked order. He led her to a chair near the fireplace and stoked the dying embers back to life, adding fresh wood until warmth began to fill the room. "What is your name?" he asked as he moved to prepare food. "Marlowe." "Marlowe Walker." She pulled her torn shawl tighter around her shoulders. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but if anyone comes looking, please say you have not seen me." Quinn turned to face her, his massive frame backlit by the fire. "How long have you been in my cellar?" "Since yesterday evening. I heard you leave on your horse 3 days ago. I had been watching the cabin for a day before that, trying to determine if anyone lived here. When you left, I thought it was abandoned. You watched me." Quinn was impressed despite himself. He was a cautious man, aware of his surroundings, yet she had managed to observe him without his knowledge. "I was desperate," Marlowe said simply. "I knew they would search the town and the nearby ranches first. I needed somewhere isolated, somewhere they would not think to look." Quinn set a pot of water on the hook over the fire and began preparing a simple stew with dried venison and vegetables. As he worked, he asked, "How did you get away?" Marlowe was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. "We were staying at the hotel in San Angelo. My husband, Clifford Walker, is a cattle buyer from Fort Worth. He has business throughout West Texas. 3 nights ago, he beat me worse than ever before. He was drunk, angry about a deal that fell through." She paused, her hands clenching in her lap. "I waited until he passed out, then I took what money I could find and ran. I knew I had to get far from town, but I had nowhere to go. No family, no friends who could hide me. Clifford has connections everywhere. He is not a man who lets things go." "He will have men searching," Quinn observed, stirring the pot. "He already does. I heard riders yesterday calling out, searching the woods. That is when I hid in your cellar. I heard them pass by, but they did not stop here." Quinn ladled stew into a bowl and brought it to her along with a piece of hard bread. "Eat slowly. Your stomach will rebel if you rush." Marlowe took the bowl with shaking hands, and Quinn could see tears forming in her eyes. "Thank you. I do not know why you are being kind, but thank you." "No one deserves what he did to you," Quinn said quietly. He settled into the chair across from her, his long legs stretched out before him. "I have seen enough evil in this world. I will not add to it by turning you away." They sat in silence while she ate. Quinn studied her in the firelight. She was beautiful beneath the bruises and dirt, but it was her spirit that intrigued him. She had survived, had found the courage to run, had managed to evade her pursuers for days. That took strength. When she finished eating, exhaustion overtook her. Her eyes kept drooping, her head nodding forward. Quinn stood and moved to his bed, a simple rope frame with a straw mattress and wool blankets. "You need rest. Take the bed." "Where will you sleep?" Marlowe asked, too tired to protest much. "I have slept on harder ground than this floor," Quinn assured her. He had bedrolls and furs aplenty. One night on the floor would not harm him. Marlowe made her way to the bed and collapsed onto it fully clothed. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing deep and even. Quinn watched her for a moment, then set about making his own sleeping arrangements. Before he settled down, he checked his rifle, making sure it was loaded and within easy reach. If riders came in the night, he would be ready. Morning arrived with frost on the windows and the smell of coffee. Marlowe woke to find Quinn already up, moving quietly around the cabin. The bruises on her face had darkened overnight, a stark reminder of what she had fled. "How do you feel?" Quinn asked when he noticed she was awake, sore, but better. She sat up slowly, wincing. "I must look terrible." "You look alive. That is what matters." Quinn poured coffee into a tin cup and brought it to her. "We need to discuss what happens next." Marlowe wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "I cannot stay here. It is not right to impose on you further. I will move on today." "To where?" Quinn's voice was calm but firm. "You have no supplies, no horse, no weapon. Winter is coming to the mountains. You would not last a week out there alone. Then what do you suggest?" There was a note of desperation in her voice. Quinn sat down, his muscular frame settling into the chair with practiced ease. "You stay here, for now, until we figure out a plan. Your reputation would be ruined if anyone knew you were harboring a married woman," Marlowe protested. "I have no reputation to ruin. I live alone by choice. The nearest neighbor is 5 miles down the mountain. No one comes up here unless they are lost." He met her eyes steadily. "Besides, you are not a married woman seeking an affair. You are a woman fleeing for her life. There is a difference." Marlowe felt tears threatening again. She had been so alone, so terrified for so long. This stranger with his quiet strength and unexpected kindness was offering her something she had not dared hope for: safety. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. Quinn was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "During the war, I saw a woman beaten to death by soldiers. They claimed she was a spy, but she was just a farmer's wife in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was too far away to stop it, too outnumbered to intervene. I have carried that guilt for years. Maybe this is my chance to do what I could not do then." The raw honesty in his words touched something deep inside Marlowe. She nodded slowly. "Then I accept your offer. Thank you, Quinn." It was the first time she had spoken his name, and something about hearing it from her lips made his heart beat a little faster. He pushed the feeling aside. She was running for her life, traumatized and hurt. The last thing she needed was him developing feelings that would complicate her situation. The days that followed established a routine. Quinn continued his work, hunting and maintaining his property, while Marlowe rested and healed. He brought her water for washing and gave her privacy when she needed it. He cooked meals that helped her regain her strength. Slowly, the haunted look in her eyes began to fade, replaced by something approaching peace. On the fourth day, riders came. Quinn was outside splitting wood when he heard the horses. He immediately set down the axe and moved toward the cabin. Marlowe was at the window, her face pale with fear. "The cellar," Quinn said quietly. "Go now." "They will search it," Marlowe whispered. "No, they will not. Trust me." He guided her quickly to the cellar door and helped her down. "Stay silent no matter what you hear." Quinn closed the door and scattered a layer of dirt over it, then stacked several pieces of firewood on top. It would not fool a thorough search, but it might be enough. He grabbed his rifle and positioned himself on the porch as 3 riders emerged from the tree line. The man in the center was well dressed, his suit marking him as wealthy. His face was hard, his eyes calculating. This, Quinn knew instinctively, was Clifford Walker. "Good morning," Walker called out, reining in his horse. "We are searching for a missing woman. She disappeared from San Angelo several days ago. Auburn hair, green eyes, answers to Marlowe. Have you seen anyone matching that description?" Quinn leaned against the porch post, his rifle held casually but ready. "I have not seen anyone. I keep to myself up here." One of the other riders, a rough-looking man with a scar across his cheek, spoke up. "We have orders to search all properties in the area." "You have no authority here," Quinn said evenly. "This is private land. You are not lawmen." "The missing woman is my wife," Walker said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "I have every right to search for her, and I have every right to defend my property from trespassers." Quinn's tone remained calm, but his meaning was clear. The rifle was not just for show. Walker studied Quinn carefully, taking in his size, his obvious strength, the way he held himself like a man who had seen combat. After a long moment, Walker smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "I mean no offense, friend. I am worried about my wife. She has been unwell, prone to fits of confusion. I fear she may have wandered off and gotten lost. If I see a confused woman wandering my property, I will be sure to send word to San Angelo," Quinn said. The scarred rider moved his horse closer. "We should at least look around the place. She could be hurt, hiding somewhere." Quinn shifted his stance slightly, bringing the rifle up just enough to be unmistakable. "No one searches my property without my permission, and you do not have it." For a tense moment, the 3 riders stared at Quinn, weighing their options. Quinn knew they were calculating whether they could take him. 3 against 1, but Quinn had cover, high ground, and a rifle. Any fight would be costly. Walker finally raised a hand, stopping his men. "Very well. We will respect your property. But if you do happen to see my wife, there is a substantial reward for information leading to her safe return. $100. "I will keep that in mind," Quinn said. Walker tipped his hat, a gesture that was more mockery than politeness. "Good day to you then." He turned his horse and the three riders headed back down the mountain. Quinn did not move until they were out of sight. Even then, he waited another hour, watching for any sign they might circle back. Finally, when he was sure they were truly gone, he went to the cellar and opened the door. Marlowe was curled in the corner, shaking. Quinn climbed down and knelt beside her. "They are gone. He came here," she whispered. "He was right above me. But he did not find you. You are safe." Quinn gently took her arm, helping her stand. Her legs were unsteady, and he supported her weight as they climbed out. Inside the cabin, Marlowe collapsed into a chair. The terror of being so close to her husband had shaken her deeply. Quinn poured her whiskey, pressing the glass into her hands. "Drink. It will steady your nerves." She obeyed, coughing as the liquor burned down her throat. When she could speak again, she said, "You stood up to him. No one ever stands up to Clifford." "He is just a man," Quinn said, "and a bully. Bullies back down when they face real opposition. He will not forget this. He will send someone back or come himself with more men." Marlowe's hands clutched the glass tightly. "I have put you in danger." Quinn shook his head. "I knew the risk when I let you stay. I made my choice." "Why?" Marlowe looked up at him, searching his face. "You do not know me." "I am nothing to you." Quinn met her gaze, and for a long moment neither spoke. Finally he said, "You are not nothing. No one is nothing." He turned away, uncomfortable with the emotion rising in his chest. "Get some rest. I will keep watch tonight." Over the following weeks, Marlowe slowly came back to life. The bruises faded, the cuts healed, and color returned to her cheeks. More importantly, the fear began to recede. She started helping around the cabin, cooking and cleaning despite Quinn's protests that she should rest. She needed to feel useful, she explained, needed to contribute rather than simply take. Quinn found himself looking forward to her presence in ways that surprised him. After 5 years of solitude, he had grown accustomed to silence. But Marlowe filled his cabin with something he had not realized he was missing: warmth. Not just the physical warmth of another person, but the warmth of companionship, conversation, shared meals, and quiet evenings by the fire. He learned her story gradually, in pieces shared during long conversations. She had grown up in a small town in Louisiana, an only child whose parents died of fever when she was 18. Alone and with few prospects, she had accepted Clifford Walker's proposal when he came through on business. He had seemed charming at first, attentive and generous. The violence started after the wedding, gradually at first, then escalating. "I should have left sooner," she said one evening as they sat by the fire. "But I had nowhere to go, no money of my own. He controlled everything." "You left when you could," Quinn said. "That takes courage." Marlowe looked at him, really looked at him. In the firelight, his strong features seemed almost carved from stone, but his eyes were kind. "You have been alone a long time, haven't you? 5 years up here." "Before that, I drifted after the war." Quinn poked at the fire with an iron rod. "I grew up in Missouri, worked my father's farm until the fighting started. Joined the Confederate Army because everyone else was joining, not because I cared much about the politics. Saw things I wish I had not seen. Did things I am not proud of. When it ended, I could not go back to farming. Too many ghosts. So you came to Texas, wandered for a while first, did some cattle driving, some prospecting, some guiding, eventually ended up here, built this cabin and decided I was done with people." He smiled slightly. "Or so I thought. Regret letting me stay?" Marlowe asked softly. Quinn turned to her, his blue eyes serious. "No, I do not regret it at all." Something passed between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of feelings neither was quite ready to name. Marlowe felt her heart beat faster. Quinn looked away first, setting down the poker. "You should get some sleep," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "I want to check the traps early tomorrow." Marlowe nodded, but as she stood, she paused beside his chair. On impulse, she reached out and touched his shoulder. "Thank you, Quinn, for everything." His hand came up to cover hers briefly, his calloused palm warm and solid. "You are welcome, Marlowe." Winter settled over the mountains in earnest. Snow fell in thick blankets, transforming Quinn's cabin into an isolated haven cut off from the world below. This suited them both fine. The deeper the snow, the less likely anyone would come searching. Quinn taught Marlowe how to shoot, starting with his pistol and graduating to the rifle. She was a quick learner, her hands steady once she overcame the initial fear of the weapon's kick. "If something happens to me, you need to be able to defend yourself," Quinn explained as she practiced aiming at a tree stump. "Nothing is going to happen to you," Marlowe said firmly. "Probably not. But we prepare for what might happen, not just what probably will." He adjusted her stance, his hands on her shoulders. "Breathe out slowly, then squeeze the trigger." She fired, and the shot hit closer to the center of the stump. Marlowe grinned, pleased with herself. Quinn smiled back, and the expression transformed his normally serious face, making him seem younger, more carefree. They were standing close together, his hands still on her shoulders. Snow was falling softly around them, catching in Marlowe's auburn hair. Quinn became acutely aware of her nearness, the way her eyes sparkled with accomplishment, the curve of her lips as she smiled. "Quinn," she said softly, and the way she said his name made his heart clench. He should step back, he knew. Should maintain the careful distance he had been preserving. But he did not step back. Instead, he raised one hand to brush snow from her hair, his fingers lingering against the soft strands. Marlowe's breath caught. She tilted her face up toward his, and Quinn saw invitation in her eyes, hope mixed with hesitation. She had been hurt so badly, and he did not want to be another man who took advantage of her vulnerability. "Marlowe," he said quietly, "I do not want to rush you into anything. You have been through hell. You need time to heal." "I have been healing," she said, "because of you." "You make me feel safe, Quinn. You make me feel like maybe I could be happy again." She set down the rifle and turned to face him fully. "I know I am still technically married. I know this situation is complicated, but what I feel for you is real." "What you feel might be gratitude," Quinn said, though his hands betrayed him by settling on her waist, holding her close. "Or relief at being safe. Those are not the same as love. You think I do not know the difference." Marlowe placed her hands on his chest, feeling the solid muscle beneath his shirt. "I lived with a man I thought I loved. I learned what false affection looks like, what manipulation and control feel like. What I feel with you is different. You ask nothing of me. You give freely. You make me laugh. You listen when I talk. You treat me like I matter." Her voice grew stronger. "So do not tell me what I feel is not real." Quinn looked down at her, this woman who had come into his life by accident and turned everything upside down. He had spent 5 years alone, convinced he was better off that way. But Marlowe had shown him what he was missing: connection, warmth, the simple pleasure of sharing life with someone. "I am falling in love with you," he admitted, the words raw and honest. "But I will not take advantage of your situation." "You are not taking advantage," Marlowe said. "I am choosing this. I am choosing you." She rose up on her toes, bringing her face closer to his. "If you feel the same way, then please do not push me away because you think you are protecting me. I am tired of being protected from things I actually want." Quinn's control, which had held firm for weeks, finally broke. He lowered his head and kissed her, gently at first, giving her every chance to pull away. But Marlowe did not pull away. She kissed him back with equal intensity, her arms wrapping around his neck, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, became something more passionate, more desperate. All the tension that had been building between them found release. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. "We should go inside," Quinn said, his voice husky, "before we freeze." They walked back to the cabin hand in hand, and once inside, the careful boundaries they had maintained dissolved. Quinn pulled Marlowe close again, kissing her with a passion that made her knees weak. She responded eagerly, her hands exploring the muscular planes of his chest and shoulders. "Are you sure?" Quinn asked, even as his hands roamed over her back. "Once we do this, there is no going back." "I do not want to go back," Marlowe said firmly. She began unbuttoning his shirt. "I want to move forward, with you." They made love with an intensity born of weeks of suppressed desire and growing affection. Quinn was gentle despite his strength, attentive to Marlowe's responses, making sure she felt only pleasure. It was everything her marriage bed had not been: tender, passionate, mutual. Afterward they lay together in Quinn's bed, Marlowe's head resting on his broad chest, his arm wrapped protectively around her. The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "I never knew it could be like that," Marlowe whispered. "Clifford, he only ever took what he wanted. He never cared if I was willing or if it hurt." Quinn's arm tightened around her. "That was not making love. That was assault." He kissed the top of her head. "What we just shared, that is how it should be. Two people giving to each other, caring about each other's pleasure." Marlowe traced patterns on his chest with her finger. "I wish I had met you first. I wish I had never married Clifford." "What is done," Quinn said. "But we can build something new together. When spring comes, we can figure out what to do about your marriage." "A divorce," Marlowe said. "If I can prove his cruelty, a judge might grant one." "That would mean going public, facing him in court," Quinn pointed out. "I know, but I cannot hide forever, and I want to be free of him legally, not just physically." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at Quinn's face. "I want to be able to marry you properly if you will have me." Quinn cupped her face in his large hand, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "I will have you, in whatever way you want, for as long as you will stay." "Forever then," Marlowe said, smiling. "I choose forever." They kissed again, and the fire burned low as they lost themselves in each other once more. Winter passed in a cocoon of contentment. Quinn and Marlowe lived as man and wife in all but name, sharing a bed and building a life together. They talked about everything: their pasts, their hopes, their fears. Marlowe learned that Quinn was an excellent storyteller when he chose to share, recounting tales of his adventures out west with dry humor. Quinn discovered that Marlowe could play the harmonica, a skill taught by her father, and on quiet evenings, she would play while he whittled wood into useful objects. They also planned for the future. Marlowe insisted she needed to face Clifford legally. Hiding indefinitely was not a life. Quinn was reluctant, knowing the danger, but he understood her need for real freedom. "In the spring, we will go to Austin," Quinn decided. "The courts there are more progressive than in smaller towns. We can find a lawyer, build a case. Your bruises have healed, but you can testify to what happened. Maybe others will come forward who have seen his violence." "He will fight it," Marlowe warned. "He has money and connections." "So do we," Quinn said. "I have saved a good amount from my years trapping and hunting. We can afford a good lawyer. And I know some men from my army days who owe me favors. One is a judge in Austin now. He is a fair man. He will listen." Marlowe felt hope kindle in her chest. For the first time since fleeing San Angelo, she allowed herself to believe she might actually be free. One night in late February, a storm hit the mountains with unusual ferocity. Wind howled around the cabin, and snow fell so thick that visibility dropped to nothing. Quinn made sure the shutters were secure and the fire was built up high. They were well supplied and in no danger, but the storm's fury was impressive. Good thing we are not going anywhere, Marlowe said, peering out through a crack in the shutters. We will be snowed in for at least a few days after this passes, Quinn estimated. But we have plenty of food and firewood. They settled in for the night, but something woke Quinn a few hours later, a sound that did not belong, the whinny of a horse. He sat up instantly, reaching for his rifle. "What is it?" Marlowe asked, instantly alert. "Horse outside. Stay here." Quinn moved to the window and carefully looked out. Through the swirling snow he could make out a dark shape, a rider slumped over his horse's neck. "Someone is out there," Quinn said. "They will freeze to death in this storm." "It could be a trap," Marlowe warned, "possibly. But I cannot leave someone to die." Quinn pulled on his coat and boots. "Bar the door behind me. If anything happens, you know where the rifle is." Before Marlowe could protest further, Quinn slipped outside into the howling storm. The cold hit him like a physical blow, but he pushed forward toward the horse and rider. When he reached them, he could see the rider was barely conscious, ice coating his beard and eyebrows. Quinn grabbed the horse's reins and led it toward the small barn where he kept his own mount. Once inside the shelter, he pulled the half-frozen man from the saddle. The stranger was older, maybe 50, wearing a deputy's badge. "Can you hear me?" Quinn asked loudly. The man's eyes fluttered open. "Got lost in the storm, saw your light." His words were slurred with cold. Quinn half-carried, half-dragged the man toward the cabin. Marlowe had been watching and opened the door quickly, letting them stumble inside before barring it again. They got the deputy in front of the fire and began stripping off his frozen outer clothes. His lips were blue, and he was shaking violently. Marlowe brought blankets while Quinn rubbed the man's hands and feet, trying to restore circulation. "Careful with his fingers and toes," Marlowe said. "Warm them slowly or the flesh could die." They worked together and gradually the deputy's shaking subsided. His color improved and his eyes became more focused. He looked around the cabin, then at Marlowe and Quinn. "Thank you," he rasped. "I would have died out there." "What were you doing up here in this weather?" Quinn asked. The deputy accepted a cup of hot coffee from Marlowe gratefully. "Looking for a woman, missing out of San Angelo back in November. Her husband hired me to keep searching." He looked at Marlowe more carefully, and Quinn saw the moment recognition dawned. "You are her, Marlowe Walker." Marlowe's face went pale, but she did not deny it. "Yes, I am her." The deputy set down his coffee, his expression troubled. "Madam, your husband is mighty worried about you." "My husband is the reason I ran," Marlowe said quietly. "He beat me, regularly. The night I left, he nearly killed me." The deputy looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Walker said you were prone to fits, that you needed help." "That is a lie," Quinn said, his voice hard. "She was hiding in my root cellar, terrified and injured when I found her. I have been keeping her safe since November." The deputy looked between them, clearly torn. His duty said he should take Marlowe back to her husband. But he was looking at a woman who showed no signs of insanity, only fear when her husband was mentioned. "If what you say is true, you could petition for a divorce," the deputy said slowly. "That is what we plan to do in the spring," Marlowe said. "We are going to Austin to find a lawyer." "Mr. Walker is not going to let that happen without a fight," the deputy warned. "He has a lot of influence." "The law is the law," Quinn said. "If she can prove abuse, a judge has to consider it." The deputy was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he sighed. "I am going to tell you something I probably should not. Clifford Walker is not a good man. I have suspected for a while that he has dealings that are not quite legal. Cattle rustling, claim jumping. Nothing I could prove, but enough to make me wary. When he hired me to find his wife, something felt off about his story." "You believe me then?" Marlowe asked. "I believe you are not insane," the deputy said, "and I believe you are safer here than with him." "But madam, You understand I am in a difficult position. I took Walker's money to find you." "Then find me," Marlowe said suddenly. "Tell him exactly where I am. Tell him Quinn Xavier is protecting me and won't let anyone take me. Tell Clifford that if he wants me back, he will have to come himself." "Marlowe," Quinn said warningly. "No," she said firmly. "I am tired of hiding. Let him come. Let him face you and see that I am not alone anymore. Let him understand that I have someone who will fight for me." She looked at the deputy. "Tell him also that I will be filing for divorce in Austin this spring. He can accept it or contest it, but either way, I am never going back to him." The deputy studied her face, seeing the steel in her spine that months of safety had restored. "You are sure about this?" "I am sure," Marlowe said. The deputy nodded slowly. "All right then. I will deliver your message, but Miss Walker, you should know that Clifford Walker is not a man who takes rejection well. He may come with violence." "Then I will meet violence with violence," Quinn said quietly. "She is under my protection. Anyone who wants to take her will have to go through me." The storm lasted 2 more days. During that time, the deputy, whose name was Henry Thornton, recovered his strength and learned the full story of Marlowe's marriage and escape. By the time the snow stopped and the skies cleared, he was fully convinced of the truth of her claims. "When I get back to San Angelo, I will file a report," Thornton said as he prepared to leave. "It will be public record that I found you alive and well, living under the protection of Quinn Xavier. That might help your case when you go before a judge." "Thank you," Marlowe said, "for believing me." Thornton tipped his hat. "Just be ready. Walker will not take this lying down." He looked at Quinn. "You are a capable man, but Walker will not come alone. He will bring men. Be prepared for that." "I will be," Quinn assured him. They watched Thornton ride away down the mountain, and Marlowe turned to Quinn with worry in her eyes. "I may have just started a war." "You started a fight for your freedom," Quinn corrected. He pulled her close. "And it is one we will win." 2 weeks later, riders came again. This time there were 6 of them, led by Clifford Walker himself. Quinn saw them coming from a distance and had time to prepare. He positioned Marlowe inside the cabin with the rifle, instructing her to shoot anyone who tried to force their way in. Then he stepped out onto the porch, his own rifle in hand, and waited. The riders stopped at a careful distance. Clifford Walker looked much as he had during his first visit, but now his eyes held open hostility. "Xavier," Walker called out, "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "Marlowe is not property," Quinn replied. "She is a free woman who has chosen to stay here. She is my wife. She belongs with me." Walker's voice was hard. "She was your wife," Quinn corrected. "She will be your wife no longer once the divorce is finalized." Walker's face flushed with anger. "There will be no divorce. I will not be humiliated that way." "Then you should not have beaten her," Quinn said flatly. "You brought this on yourself." One of Walker's men, a rough-looking character with a gun belt hung low, spoke up. "We are taking the woman one way or another." Quinn's rifle came up smoothly, aimed at the speaker's chest. "The first man who tries will be the first man to die. I am not bluffing, and I am not missing from this distance." "There are 6 of us and 1 of you," Walker pointed out. "And the woman inside has a rifle too," Quinn said. "She is a good shot now. I taught her. Between us, we will drop at least 3 or 4 of you before you reach the door. Are you willing to die for Walker's pride? Because that is what this is. He does not want her back because he loves her. He wants her back because she dared to leave him." The men shifted uneasily in their saddles. What Quinn said made sense. Walker had hired them for intimidation and retrieval, not for a gunfight against a competent opponent. Walker saw his men's hesitation and played his final card. "I am willing to pay for her return. $1,000. Split among you if you bring her to me." That got their attention. $1,000 was serious money, but Quinn saw the calculation in their eyes. Was it worth dying for? Last chance, Quinn said, his voice carrying clearly across the space between them. Turn around and ride away. Or start shooting and see how many of you make it back down the mountain. For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then one of Walker's men, an older fellow with gray in his beard, turned his horse. I did not sign up for this. You want a war, Walker, find someone else to fight it. He rode away without looking back. That broke the standoff. 2 more men followed, leaving only Walker and 2 others. Cowards, Walker spat. Sensible men, Quinn corrected. You have lost, Walker, accept it. Walker's face twisted with rage. This is not over, Xavier. I will see you hang for kidnapping. I did not kidnap anyone. The deputy's report will confirm that. Marlowe is here of her own free will. Quinn's aim did not waver. Now leave my property before I decide you are trespassing with violent intent and act accordingly. For a moment, Quinn thought Walker might actually draw his weapon and try to shoot it out. But the man was a bully, not a gunfighter. He was brave when facing a defenseless woman, but less so when confronting an armed opponent who was clearly prepared to kill him. You will regret this, Walker promised. Then he wheeled his horse and rode away, his 2 remaining men following. Quinn did not lower his rifle until they were out of sight. Only then did he allow himself to breathe deeply. Inside, he could hear Marlowe moving. She opened the door, her face pale but determined. Is it over? She asked. For now, Quinn said. But he meant what he said. He will try something else. We need to go to Austin sooner rather than later. Get this divorce settled legally before he can make more trouble. How long until we can travel? Marlowe asked. Quinn assessed the weather, the snow levels, the condition of the passes. 2 weeks, maybe 3. The main roads should be clear by then. They spent those weeks preparing. Quinn sold some of his furs to a trader who passed through, converting them to cash they would need in Austin. He also wrote letters to his former comrade, who was now a judge, explaining the situation and asking for assistance in finding a good lawyer. Marlowe practiced with the rifle daily, determined to be able to defend herself. She also sewed herself a new dress, wanting to look respectable when they went to court. Quinn watched her work, marveling at how much she had changed from the terrified woman he had found in his root cellar. She was still the same person, but now her strength showed clearly. I love you, he said one evening, the words coming unbidden. Marlowe looked up from her sewing, her face softening. I love you too, Quinn, more than I can say. When this is over, when you are free, will you marry me? Properly, legally? Quinn asked. Yes, Marlowe said without hesitation. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They left for Austin on a clear morning in late March. The journey would take several days, and Quinn was well armed, expecting possible trouble. But the road was quiet, and they reached Austin without incident. The city was bustling, far larger than San Angelo. Quinn had been here once before and knew his way around reasonably well. They found lodging at a respectable boarding house, and Quinn made sure to arrange for separate rooms to avoid scandal. The next day, they met with the judge Quinn had served with, a man named Samuel Richardson. He was in his 50s now, distinguished-looking with silver hair and sharp eyes. He welcomed Quinn warmly and listened carefully to their story. This is a difficult case, Richardson said when they finished. Divorce is never simple, and proving abuse without witnesses can be challenging. I have Deputy Thornton's report, Marlowe said. He saw me and confirmed I was there of my own will. He can also testify that I showed no signs of insanity, which was Clifford's claim. That helps, Richardson agreed. I can recommend a lawyer, a man named Charles Montgomery. He has handled several divorce cases successfully. He looked at Quinn. You understand that your relationship with Mrs. Walker will be scrutinized. Her husband will claim adultery, that her real reason for leaving was to be with you. Let him claim it, Quinn said. The truth is she was hiding in my root cellar, injured and terrified when I found her. I gave her shelter. Our relationship developed later, after months of her recovery. Even if Walker tries to make it look like adultery, the fact remains that she had valid reasons to flee. Montgomery, when they met him, proved to be a shrewd lawyer with genuine compassion for Marlowe's situation. He took detailed notes, asked penetrating questions, and built a strategy. "We file for divorce on grounds of cruelty and extreme abuse," Montgomery explained. "We present Deputy Thornton's testimony. We present you, Mrs. Walker, as a credible witness to your own experience. We emphasize that you fled in fear for your life, and that fear was reasonable given the severity of your injuries." "What about Quinn?" Marlowe asked. "Will his sheltering me be used against us?" "Possibly," Montgomery admitted. "But we can argue that Mr. Xavier acted as any decent person would, offering shelter to someone in desperate need. The fact that you later developed feelings for each other does not negate the legitimacy of your original reasons for leaving your husband." The court date was set for 3 weeks later. During that time, Montgomery gathered evidence and statements. Deputy Thornton agreed to travel to Austin to testify, which strengthened their case considerably. Montgomery also tracked down a doctor in San Angelo who had treated Marlowe twice for injuries she claimed came from falls, but which the doctor suspected were from abuse. Clifford Walker, of course, contested the divorce vigorously. He hired his own lawyers and filed counterclaims of adultery and abandonment. He painted himself as a wronged husband whose unstable wife had run away with another man. The trial was held in late April, and the courtroom was packed. Divorce cases were always of interest, and this one had the added drama of wealth, violence, and a love triangle. Marlowe testified first, and she was remarkable. She spoke clearly and calmly, detailing years of abuse without exaggeration or hysteria. She described the final night in San Angelo, the beating that nearly killed her, her desperate flight. She explained finding Quinn's cabin, hiding in the root cellar, and Quinn's decision to protect her. "Did you have romantic feelings for Mr. Xavier when he first found you?" Montgomery asked. "No," Marlowe said firmly. "I was terrified, injured, and focused only on survival. Quinn offered me safety without asking for anything in return. He was a gentleman. Any feelings that developed came later, after months of living in proximity and discovering we enjoyed each other's company." Under cross-examination, Walker's lawyer tried to paint her as an adulteress and a liar, but Marlowe held firm. She did not lose her temper or break down. She simply told the truth, and her sincerity was evident. Deputy Thornton testified next, confirming that when he found Marlowe, she showed no signs of mental instability. "She was coherent, rational, and clearly afraid of her husband," Thornton said. "Mr. Xavier had provided her shelter but was not holding her against her will. In fact, she was preparing to come forward and petition for divorce." The doctor from San Angelo testified about his suspicions regarding Marlowe's injuries. "I saw Mrs. Walker twice in the 6 months before she disappeared. Both times she had bruising consistent with being struck. I asked if she was safe at home, and she became nervous, insisting she was merely clumsy. But I am a doctor. I know the difference between accident and assault." When it was Walker's turn, he presented himself as a concerned, loving husband whose wife had been lured away by a mountain man. But under Montgomery's cross-examination, Walker's veneer cracked. He became angry, defensive, and his true nature showed through. "Did you ever strike your wife?" Montgomery asked. "I may have disciplined her when she was hysterical," Walker admitted, but it was for her own good. So you admit to hitting her? A husband has the right to control his household, Walker said stiffly. Even to the point of causing injury, even to the point where she fears for her life. Walker's face flushed. She is being dramatic. Women exaggerate. Montgomery let that statement hang in the air, letting the jury hear the dismissiveness, the lack of remorse. No further questions, he said. The trial lasted 3 days. On the final day, Judge Richardson, who was presiding, gave his verdict. In Texas in 1879, divorce was still difficult to obtain, but not impossible, especially with clear evidence of cruelty. I have listened carefully to all testimony, Richardson said. I find Mrs. Walker's account credible and supported by evidence. I find that she had reasonable cause to fear for her safety and that her flight was justified. As to the allegations of adultery, I find that, while Mrs. Walker did eventually form a romantic attachment to Mr. Xavier, this occurred after she had already left her husband and was living independently under his protection. The relationship, while perhaps inappropriate in timing, does not negate her legitimate reasons for seeking divorce. He looked directly at Walker. Mr. Walker, you have admitted to striking your wife. You have shown no remorse. You have demonstrated a controlling and violent temperament. On the grounds of extreme cruelty, I hereby grant Mrs. Walker her petition for divorce. The marriage is dissolved. The courtroom erupted. Walker was on his feet, shouting objections, but the judge's gavel restored order. Marlowe sat frozen, unable to believe it was real. Quinn, sitting behind her, put a hand on her shoulder, and she turned to him with tears streaming down her face. "You are free," he said softly. Outside the courthouse, Walker confronted them, his face twisted with rage. "This is not over," he snarled at Marlowe. "I will make you regret this." Quinn stepped between them, his imposing frame making Walker step back instinctively. "It is over, Walker. The law has spoken. Marlowe is free of you. If you come near her again, if you threaten her again, I will have you arrested. And if you push me too far, I will handle it personally. You understand me?" Walker looked into Quinn's eyes and saw the promise there. This was not a man who made idle threats. Finally, Walker turned and stalked away, his lawyers hurrying after him. "Is it really over?" Marlowe asked, still not quite believing. "It is really over," Montgomery confirmed, joining them on the courthouse steps. "You are a free woman, Mrs. Walker. Or rather, you are no longer Mrs. Walker. You are free to reclaim your maiden name or take a new name." He looked between Marlowe and Quinn with a slight smile. "I suspect you may be changing your name again soon anyway." Indeed, Quinn and Marlowe were married exactly 1 week later in a simple ceremony in Austin. Deputy Thornton stood as witness, along with Judge Richardson and Charles Montgomery. Marlowe wore a new dress in pale blue, and Quinn had gotten a haircut and trimmed his beard, though he still looked every inch the mountain man. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Quinn kissed Marlowe with such tenderness that several people in attendance found themselves wiping away tears. This was a love that had been earned through hardship, built on trust and respect, and it showed in every look they exchanged. They spent their wedding night in Austin's finest hotel, a luxury Quinn insisted on. Marlowe fell asleep in her husband's arms, truly and legally her husband now, and felt a peace she had never known. They returned to the mountain cabin in early May, when the wildflowers were blooming and the world was green and alive. Marlowe had never been happier to see the simple log structure that had become her home and sanctuary. "We could move somewhere else if you want," Quinn offered as they dismounted. "Build a bigger house, move closer to town." "No," Marlowe said firmly. "This is where you found me. This is where we fell in love. This is home." Quinn smiled and pulled her close. "Home it is then." Life settled into a peaceful rhythm. Quinn continued his hunting and trapping, though now he had help. Marlowe proved adept at skinning and processing furs. Together they were more efficient and their income increased. They talked about eventually buying more land, maybe running some cattle. In late summer, Marlowe discovered she was pregnant. She told Quinn one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "We are going to have a baby," she said, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. Quinn's eyes widened, then filled with a joy so intense it took his breath away. "A baby! Truly, truly," Marlowe confirmed, laughing at his expression. "Are you happy?" "Happy does not begin to cover it," Quinn said. He pulled her into his lap, cradling her carefully. "You have given me everything, Marlowe. A reason to live again, a home that is more than just walls, and now a child. I do not deserve you." "Yes, you do," Marlowe said firmly. "You saved my life. You gave me safety, freedom, love. You deserve every happiness." Their son was born the following spring, during a gentle rain that washed the mountains clean. The birth was attended by a midwife from San Angelo, a kind woman who did not judge Quinn and Marlowe's unusual situation. The baby was healthy and strong, with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes. They named him Thomas James Xavier, and Quinn held his son with a reverence that made Marlowe's heart overflow with love. This huge, powerful man who could face down armed opponents and survive alone in the wilderness was reduced to jelly by an 8-pound infant. "He is perfect," Quinn whispered, tracing his son's tiny hand with one large finger. "Absolutely perfect." "He is ours," Marlowe said, leaning against Quinn's shoulder as they both gazed at their child. "Our little miracle." Word of Walker reached them occasionally through traders and travelers. He had left Texas, some said, heading to California after his business ventures in San Angelo fell apart. Others claimed he had moved to Mexico. Wherever he was no longer a threat, and that was all that mattered. 2 years after Thomas was born, Marlowe had a second child, a daughter they named Sarah Grace. She had her mother's auburn hair and her father's blue eyes, and she wrapped Quinn around her tiny finger from the moment she was born. Quinn, who had once thought he was meant to be alone, found himself surrounded by family, and he loved every chaotic, exhausting, wonderful moment of it. He taught Thomas to ride and track. He sang lullabies to Sarah in his deep voice. He loved Marlowe with a depth that grew stronger every year. Marlowe thrived in ways she had never imagined possible. She was no longer the frightened woman hiding in a root cellar. She was strong, confident, a partner to her husband and a mother to her children. She sometimes thought about how different her life might have been if she had not found Quinn's cabin that desperate November night. The thought always made her grateful. One evening, when Thomas was 5 and Sarah was 3, they sat together on the porch watching the children play in the yard. Quinn's arm was around Marlowe, her head on his shoulder, content in the simple pleasure of being together. "You ever regret it?" Marlowe asked. "Giving up your solitude for all this chaos?" Quinn laughed, a rich sound that still made Marlowe's heart flutter. "Never, not for one single moment. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Marlowe. You and our children." "You saved me," Marlowe said softly. "We saved each other," Quinn corrected. He turned her face up to his and kissed her gently. "I was existing before you, not living. You taught me the difference." As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Quinn and Marlowe Xavier sat surrounded by the life they had built together. It had started with fear and violence, with a desperate woman hiding in a root cellar and a lonely man who chose compassion over convenience. But it had become something beautiful, a love that was true and deep, a family that was happy and whole, a home that was filled with laughter and warmth. The mountains stood eternal around them, witnesses to their story. And in the years to come, when Thomas and Sarah were grown with families of their own, they would tell their children about how their parents met, about a brave woman who fled for her life and a strong man who protected her, about how love could grow in the darkest circumstances and bloom into something that would last forever. Quinn added onto the cabin over the years, building more rooms as their family grew. In time, they had 4 children total: Thomas, Sarah, and later twins, a boy and girl they named Michael and Emma. The cabin that had once housed one lonely man became a home filled with the sounds of children playing, meals shared, and love freely given. Deputy Thornton became a regular visitor, a friend who always had stories to share and candy for the children. Judge Richardson sent letters occasionally, pleased to have played a role in their happy ending. Even Charles Montgomery visited once, surprised and delighted to see how well his clients had fared. The town of San Angelo eventually forgot about the scandal of Clifford Walker and his runaway wife. New scandals replaced old ones, as they always did. But in the mountains above the town, Quinn and Marlowe Xavier built a legacy that would endure. A legacy of love, courage, and the understanding that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Quinn surprised Marlowe with a gift, a beautiful wooden box he had carved himself, inlaid with her initials. Inside was a letter he had written, expressing everything he felt for her, all the gratitude and love and awe that she was his wife. Marlowe cried as she read it, and Quinn held her close, still protective, still devoted after all these years. They had grown older together, raised their children together, weathered storms both literal and metaphorical together. And through it all, their love had remained constant, a foundation on which everything else was built. Their children grew up strong and confident, secure in the knowledge that they were loved. Thomas became a rancher, staying close to the mountains he loved. Sarah married a teacher and moved to Austin but visited often. Michael followed in his father's footsteps, becoming a hunter and guide. Emma became a seamstress, her talent with a needle surpassing even her mother's. As Quinn and Marlowe grew older, they often sat on their porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over the mountains just as they had done for decades. Quinn's hair had gone gray, and his beard was now silver, but his blue eyes were still sharp, and his arms were still strong when he held his wife. Marlowe's auburn hair had threads of silver running through it, and lines creased her face, but to Quinn, she was as beautiful as the day he had pulled her from the root cellar. "You remember the first time you saw me?" Marlowe asked one evening, the question coming from nowhere. "I will never forget it," Quinn said. "Those green eyes staring up at me, terrified but defiant. You were ready to fight even though you could barely stand. I knew right then you were special." "I thought you might turn me away," Marlowe admitted, "or turn me in for the reward money." "I could never have done that," Quinn said. "From the moment I saw you, something in me recognized something in you, like we were meant to find each other." "We were," Marlowe said with certainty. "Every terrible thing I went through led me to you. Every hardship was worth it because it brought me here." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, watching the world they had built together. In the distance, they could see Thomas's ranch, and smoke rising from the chimney meant their grandchildren were there, probably causing cheerful havoc. "We did good," Quinn said softly. "Raised good children, built a good life." "We did more than good," Marlowe corrected. "We created something beautiful from pain and fear. We proved that love can heal, that people can change, that happy endings are possible even when things seem darkest." Quinn pulled her closer, and she nestled against him, still fitting perfectly after all these years. I love you, Marlowe Xavier. Today, tomorrow, and always. And I love you, Quinn Xavier, forever and beyond. As the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, Quinn and Marlowe sat together in the home they had made, surrounded by the evidence of a life well lived and a love well earned. The root cellar where their story began was still there, now used for its intended purpose of storing vegetables and preserves. But sometimes, Marlowe would go down there and remember that desperate November night when she had hidden in the darkness, terrified and alone. She would remember and she would be grateful. Grateful for her own courage in running. Grateful for Quinn's kindness in sheltering her. Grateful for every day since then, every challenge overcome, every joy shared, every moment of love. Their story became legend in the mountains, passed down through generations. The tale of the mountain man and the woman he found hiding in his root cellar. The story of how he protected her, how they fell in love, how they built a life that was rich in all the ways that truly mattered. Quinn and Marlowe lived to see their grandchildren grown and their great-grandchildren born. They lived to celebrate 50 years of marriage, surrounded by the family they had created, in the home they had built, in the mountains that had sheltered them both. And when they finally passed, within months of each other as devoted couples often do, they were laid to rest on a hill overlooking their cabin. Their children and grandchildren gathered to say goodbye, sharing stories of Quinn's quiet strength and Marlowe's fierce love. They spoke of how their parents' marriage had been a model for them all, showing what true partnership looked like, what real love meant. The cabin still stands, maintained now by descendants who understand its significance. The root cellar remains, a reminder of where it all began. And on quiet evenings, if you listen carefully, some say you can almost hear the sound of laughter, the murmur of conversation, the gentle melody of a harmonica being played while wood is being whittled. The echoes of a love that transcended circumstance, that turned fear into courage, that built happiness from hardship. Quinn Xavier had found Marlowe Walker hiding in his root cellar on a cold November night in 1878. She had been running from someone who wanted to hurt her, and he had made absolutely certain they never found her. But more than that, he had given her safety, freedom, and love. And she had given him purpose, family, and a reason to believe in happiness again. Their story ended not with drama or tragedy, but with the quiet contentment of two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting. They had lived fully, loved deeply, and left behind a legacy that would continue through the generations descended from them. In the end, that was the greatest victory. Not just that Marlowe had escaped her abuser, not just that Quinn had found companionship, but that together they had created a love story that proved redemption was possible, that second chances were real, and that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the darkest soil. The mountains remained, eternal and unchanging, standing watch over the land where Quinn and Marlowe Xavier had loved and lived and raised their family. And their story, the story of the mountain man and the woman in the root cellar, lived on, inspiring others to have courage in dark times, to extend kindness to those in need, and to believe that love, real and true and lasting love, was always worth fighting for.